Happy Webinar Wednesday. Thank you so much for tuning in today to join us. So if you are here right now, or if you are tuning in right now, then you're here to hear about cookbooks. So thank you so much. Let me know where you're from in the chat when you get a chance, or just say hello. If you've been to our webinars before, then you might be familiar with how this is going to go, but this one's actually different than anyone we've done before. So trick question, you're not familiar with how this is going to go. So we're going to talk about cookbooks today. I'm going to share a little bit about Lulu and some best practices about making cookbooks on Lulu. Then I'm very excited to introduce Justin and Juby, who are here with me today, who are influencers and cookbook authors and schooly life family, which means they live in a school bus sometimes. So we're excited to hear about that. Hopefully they'll get into a little bit of that later in the broadcast, which makes this sound really fancy and like I'm not in my basement. So hello to everyone. Oh, yeah, thank you for already saying hello. We've got some spread out attendees already, so we're always excited to see that. I hope wherever you are tuning in from, it is beautiful and you are having a fantastic day. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and jump in. A couple housekeeping things will be at the end. We will take questions. So if you have any burning questions about what it's like to create a cookbook or be influencers or live in a van, all of it is free game. And I will also say for anyone who comes in late or has to leave early, we will be sending out the recording to everyone who registered. So if you miss anything, you will get the full recording afterwards, and we'll also post it to our YouTube channel. So stay tuned for all of that. And thank you everyone for hopping in and saying where you're from. Hello to everyone. Seafoodies. Lynn, that's a new one. I haven't heard that one, but I guess that means you love seafood. I'm down with that. All right. So I'm going to share my screen and sorry, I've turned off audio. Didn't mean to do that. I'm going to share my screen and hop into my slides so we can go ahead and get started here. So it looks like I X'd out of my slides while I was starting this, but luckily it's right here. So I'll just open it back up. All right, so sharing my screen and hopping into some slides. Okay, so hopefully you all can see this. You should be seeing a cat with sunglasses on that has nothing to do with Lulu, but somehow always joins us for our webinars, and we're going to dive in. All right, so for all of you that are joining us that may not be familiar with Lulu or what we do, I'll tell you, you don't have to wait any longer. So Lulu was founded in 2002 by Bob Young. Our platform is free to use. So if you see this webinar and think, oh, cookbooks, I would love to create one, you can, and only pay for the print products that you make. So we published over 1 million books and paid out over $107 million. I'm sorry, yeah, $107 million. Every time I say that number, it chokes me up because it's just so overwhelming to think about. So paid out in author revenues, which is very exciting. We have our mission statement here, which is Lulu's dedicated to making the world a better place, one book at a time through sustainable practices, innovative print on demand, and a commitment to excellent service. So a little bit more about us. I always love to plug this when I have a chance. But we're also a certified B Corporation. So if you're not familiar with what that is, it just means that we invite a third party in to take a look at our social and environmental performance and make sure that we are held to some high standards in how we treat the earth, how we treat our employees, and how we treat each other. If you're not familiar with B Corps, please take a look. It's a wonderful community of organizations, and you should spend your dollars there if you have extra dollars to spend. All right, this is me. So I am Chelsea Bennett. I am the brand engagement manager. That's me and my cat. I always feel like it looks like I hunted him, but he likes it. He's good. All right, so what do we do? Hopefully, if you are not familiar with Lulu, all this gobbledygook that I've said up to this point makes you interested in what we're doing. So I'm going to go over a little bit of the basics and then just some best practices for cookbook creation specifically. And then we'll invite Justin and Juby to hop on and talk to us about the beautiful cookbook that they have created. So as I mentioned, Lulu's platform is free to use. So it's free to publish on lulu.com. You just create an account, upload your cover file and your interior PDFs to Lulu's publishing platform, and then you can publish. You can publish and make your books available. You can publish them to sell through your own websites, or you can publish them in private or direct access for just a select elite group of people that you want to share your work with. So another great thing about Lulu is that we are print on demand. So that means no minimums or maximums. When you use print on demand technology, you only pay for the copies you need when you need them. So you don't have to worry about managing any inventory, which can be a great solution for authors, especially if you are newly starting out or maybe trying a project that you haven't tried before, such as cookbooks. So we publish in print and ebook formats. So we have over 3,000 formats to choose from, including hardcover and coil bound, which some other folks in our space do not offer. So if you're interested in that, check us out. But we have over 3,000. So the next slide here, I'm going to show a little video of how you can use some tools on our platform to really configure and figure out the perfect book for you and what that'll cost. So I'm going to play this video now, and it's going to show you our book pricing calculator. So you can see here, when you go to our book pricing calculator, you will just enter in the specs of your book. You can put in your page count, and then it'll give you the different options you can choose based on the information you put in. And what I love about this tool, and I think it's really powerful because you can kind of configure everything to match the budget that you're working with. So if you have a specific price point in mind, then you can play around with the different trim sizes, binding types, page counts, paperweight, color, premium color, standard, black and white, all of that good stuff. And then as you can see here, it'll give you your per unit price. So I think that that's amazing. It can be really helpful when you're planning out a book campaign or a book launch or just trying a new project. But some other things I want to call out here while we're on this page are, it will not only give you all of the specs for your book, so you can see that for your selection, but on the other side of that, it gives you the requirements for your book. So you can see the page size, the cover size, spine width, all of that stuff that you would want to know if you're maybe working with a designer or someone who's formatting your book. These are all great specs to provide to them or details to give them that can help them navigate through that process. Also, we provide templates. So if you want to download the templates and provide those to whoever you're working with, you can do that from this page as well. So this is just lulu.com/pricing. And you can use this really powerful tool. If you scroll down on this page, you can also see shipping estimates and quantity discounts and things like that. So keep that in mind as you're planning. All right, so for the main event, here's what we're here to talk about: cookbooks. So I'm going to just go over this. Again, is very high-level overview. We've got some great blogs about this. We also have a Lulu University video that talks about cookbooks. So definitely check those out if you have more questions or want to go in depth. But as a starting point, here are just some things to consider as you begin to plan for your cookbook. So starting with about 20 recipes is a really good place or a good number to kind of hit. So that'll make a pretty substantial book. But since this is print on demand, that number can change to accommodate your project and whatever you have in mind. When you're collecting recipes, it's a good idea to either choose a theme, so brunch, everybody loves brunch, or curate a good balance of dishes. So, if you think about traditional cookbooks and how they're created, there's usually different sections of appetizers, main courses, desserts, things like that. So depending on what your cookbook is and the goals you have in mind, choosing a theme can be a really great way to organize your dishes, or just deciding how many of each you want to have so you can represent a really nice balance of different varieties, flavors, and dishes, things like that. So number 2 is estimate at least 2 pages per recipe. This is just a good rule of thumb. And again, all of these can be changed and should be changed and modified to fit your project and what you need. But creating or thinking about estimating 2 pages per recipe is a good way to go about it, because you can leave plenty of room for the recipe and then photos or anecdotes. So we see a lot of folks who make cookbooks that are about the family or, specific recipes that you grew up with that your family might contribute. So it's always kind of fun to be able to put in those stories of, grandma made this pie on my birthday and it was great, or, whatever your backstory is, especially if this is kind of a keepsake for families. It's always nice to add those stories and have space for those photos and really make it personal and customized to you. So use high resolution photos is number 3. So we eat with our eyes as well as our mouths. So one of the best things about photos or cookbooks is the photos that go along with them. And when we have Justin and Juby, when they join us in a moment, I'm so excited to talk to them about how they made the photos for their books and how they created them, because their book is not only a feast for the tummy, it's a feast for the eyes and the ears, because they have a playlist. So spoiler alert, we'll want to talk about that as well. But using high resolution photos is a great way to really showcase anything, you know, the specifics of a recipe, the finished dish, how it looks, really entice people to want to purchase your cookbook and make those recipes. So our best practice here is to use photos that have at least 300 DPI or higher, and that's going to give you a really high quality and translate really well on the printed page. All right, our last little pro tip here is picking the right format. So cookbooks are functional, right? So most cookbooks, unless you want it to be sort of ornamental, which is a great way to go about it as well, then you're going to think about the form and function and what it will be like in the kitchen. So we recommend using a larger trim size, so 8.5 by 11, which is your traditional kind of notebook paper or printer paper. That's great. It's going to give you a lot of space for the recipe, going to give you plenty of space for the photos and things like that. And it'll make it easier for the end user to actually use, which is something you may want to keep in mind. And then choosing a hardcover or coil binding type helps create, it can be something more artistic or functional. So when you think about the cookbooks that you may have at home, hardcover is a great selection for cookbooks, and coil bound as well. So coil bound is a great option for this because, of course, you can fold it flat or fold it back or whatever you need to do while you're in the kitchen going through these recipes. So these are a couple of things to think about as you plan your cookbook. And again, we'll have time for questions at the end. So if you want to ask about any of these things, or if you have something we haven't touched on yet, then we'll open that up momentarily. All right, so I've talked about cookbooks. I've said people make cookbooks on Lulu. So now I'm going to prove it. I'll show you some. So Lulu in the Wild, this gentleman does not publish with Lulu. He's not made a cookbook with Lulu because he's in jail. All right, so first up, Gabrielle McBay is a private chef in Hollywood. She is a cookbook author and has created her cookbook on Lulu. I wanted to share her profile with you. She is prolific on Instagram. She has beautiful photos. I hear the kids say this these days, she's a mood. I think you can get that from these pictures. But Gabrielle is a private chef who created a cookbook, and she's selling it through Lulu, which is a great option if you don't have your own website or don't want to kind of take on the learning curve or the experience of creating a bookstore on your website. Then you can sell it through lulu.com. So Gabrielle is a great example of someone who's done this. So you can see a couple pictures of her recipes here and what she works with and what she works on. And then this next page is her sell page on lulu.com. So you can see her book is You Have Food at Home. She created this during the quarantine as a way to invite people to, you know, think about your pantry as the first place that you try to build your dinner instead of thinking, where can I order from or where can I go to eat? She's encouraging folks to use what they have at home and create really beautiful dishes and very simple. So it's a way to let people know that they can try cooking without being really intimidated. So again, this is an example of someone who created a cookbook and is selling it through lulu.com. That's an awesome option. But our next example are who we have joining us today, what I'm really excited about. So I'll go through a couple slides showing you what they've done, and then Justin and Juby will join me to talk about that a little bit. So up next, Justin and Juby. So this is a shot from their Instagram, and I kind of piecemealed this together. So I wanted to give a good representation of who they are and what they do. I also just props to y'all for getting this cowl to read your book. That's something new that we've seen here. So you can see that they're in the full swing of the van life on their Instagram and showing you what that looks like. How they had time to create a beautiful cookbook, I don't know, but we'll find out. So again, they have a great platform that they built here. And you can see a picture of their fantastic cookbook. So I'm biased. I love macaroni and cheese. I love key lime pie. So those are the pictures that I wanted to show on this slide. But I didn't want to give it all away. This book is so well made and so beautifully created and designed. It's a great experience for anyone who is a fan of cooking or is a fan of just aesthetically pleasing books. this book is an art book as much as it is a cookbook. So if you're interested in that or any of these recipes, then please check it out. I'll put a link up at the end that tells you where to get it. But Justin and Juby are doing something really interesting because not only are they living in a van, but they also created this cookbook and are selling it through their own website. So we'll talk to them a little bit about that. But I just wanted to share some examples of how beautiful this book is. So you can see the front cover here. It's just expertly done, perfectly designed. And then you see some of the recipes, which are, you know, I talked about eating with your eyes and how important it is to have really good photos of the recipes you're sharing to entice people to make them. I am not much of a chef, but this cookbook makes me feel like I want to be, which is, I think, the goal there. So this is a great example of what theirs looks like, just a couple snapshots from the inside. And I'm going to share this, and then I will hop back in and we'll ask them some questions. But if you're interested in buying their book, you can go to justinandjuby.com/tinyhomebigflavor. So definitely check that out when we're done today. And without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my slides. And Justin and Juby, whenever you guys are ready, if you could hop back in, and we'll go ahead and ask you some questions. All right. Hello,
thanks
guys.
for having us, and we appreciate all the kind words.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys doing so well. It's always nice when you have an author that uses the platform. I mean, we have the platform, that's great, but it's really about how people use it. And so you guys have done a fantastic job. So we'll just start at the beginning. Can you tell me a little bit about your platform and what you guys do?
You want to take that?
No, you did.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, we started some social media channels, must have been, 3 years ago now?
Yeah.
Yeah, we started them as we were beginning to build out the bus. We bought a full-size bus and decided to turn it into our home. And as we were doing that, we wanted to document the process as we were doing the build. And we started putting together YouTube videos and started an Instagram. In the beginning, I'll be honest with you, it wasn't necessarily intended to be like a brand per se, as much as like just memories for us to look back on. And so we documented it along the way. People started watching and it started growing. And fast forward to today, we kind of use it to document our journeys, but it's kind of morphed into where we share like healthy eating, positive mindset, a lot of our daughter, obviously, and much more, I guess. Yeah. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good. Good. I'm glad you guys are on the same page with how all that came to be. So where did you see, I mean, was healthy eating kind of always in the background, or how did that sort of parlay into creating a cookbook?
Yeah. That kind of all has been an evolving process of just like getting to know what healthy eating is for each of us individually and like together as a family. Back in my younger days, I had an eating disorder and various kinds of it, but it was something that I really struggled with and something that I had to kind of like get through eventually over time. Healthy eating obviously was one of the answers to being able to feel better in my mindset and my physical self, and then just be more accepting of my body and how I felt and looked and all that kind of stuff. So that had a big play into my direction of healthy eating. I never was unhealthy per se. I just was always restrictive or overeating. So that was something, I guess, that led me to more juicing and more smoothies, more raw veganism, and just more wholesome meals that were plant-based.
Yeah, and I know personally, like once we got together, I mean, I started to transform a lot of my eating habits because she was changing too. So she had a really positive impact on my diet and how it's transitioned over the years too, which I'm super appreciative for.
Yeah. So did you guys have fun? I mean, was this collaborative with the cookbook, or Juby, was this more kind of your passion project? I mean, you obviously seem like you had the knowledge for these recipes and the healthy eating. So when did you guys decide, like, yes, let's turn this into a cookbook? This is a good idea.
Yeah. So back in those kind of gloomy days, that was like 2013, right after I graduated, I fell into raw veganism and was doing that a lot and exploring recipes, and had always taken pictures of my food and wanted to like share recipes because people were curious about what raw veganism really was. It was like just kind of becoming a trend, I guess. So it's kind of been something in the back of my mind since way back when, and eventually it just sort of like has slowly come to the forefront of my life again. And last year or I guess 2 years ago now, we were back in the UK and trying to kind of figure out what our like year goals and intentions were going to be. And we had talked a little bit about the cookbook and how that was going to be something that we were going to put out into the world this year. We wanted to generate a product that would allow us to have passive income as well as just make an impact in other people's lives in a really positive and helpful way. So I guess we started working on it that year, and it took a little longer than we had expected, and it dragged on into this year. And yeah, I don't know, it's like slowly been becoming something that we, I guess, are both passionate about now. And I probably did more of the cooking and the recipes, but he was definitely a good guiding force for like little details that I was just kind of, when you need another set of eyes to look at something and be like, oh, this is what you're missing. And I'm like, oh, thank you. I needed like some pepper, or like an extra spoon, or like whatever for the pictures. And so he was definitely super helpful with that. And then I'm sure anybody who follows us on Instagram knows that I'm pretty bad at writing and spelling. And so he was calling me out for a lot of spell check and grammatical errors and things like that. So that was also really helpful. But yeah.
And to be honest too, I mean, like, this was Juby's baby, no doubt. She was kind enough to let me do a number of recipes.
That's not true. There's recipes that are like, they're your dish. So it would have been a shame for me to take that from you.
Totally. Yeah. But it was a lot of fun working together on it. And we learned so much from it. We'd never done anything like this before together. So yeah, there was a lot of times we were butting heads for sure.
Yeah.
But overall, like, it was such a fun and challenging and growing project.
Well, yeah, tell me a little bit about the conception when you decided that you wanted to make this cookbook. How many people did you work with and how long did it take? Because when I look at your book, I mean, it just seems like so much went into it. You can tell that it's like, love, intentionality, the knowledge, and you wanting to share that is so evident. But I'm just curious as far as the logistics go. I mean, did you have to work with a designer, or did you have all this knowledge before? Or, I mean, did you have to go through a couple rough drafts? Talk to me a little bit about the creation process and what that was like.
So we started everything not really knowing how to like organize and kind of coordinate like what recipes we'd taken pictures of, written up the recipes for, tested and tried out before we come to like the final recipe that we were going to share. So we started, I think, with like a Google document, which then became like a Google spreadsheet, which was like categorized by food. And then there was like recipes that we wanted to do in the cookbook, and then ones that we did, and then we were like, that doesn't make sense anymore, let's just get rid of it. I'd much prefer this one. This is getting to be like too many recipes. And then there was like maybe too many like breakfast dishes and like maybe 2 for desserts. So it was like, why do we even have a dessert section if there's only 2 recipes? So trying to like balance everything out so it made sense was probably like the first phase, I guess.
Man, trial by fire. We had no idea what we were doing. Yeah. We jumped in head first and we just went after it. And we
started working on it a bunch and taking pictures and sharing about how we were working on it on our YouTube channel. And I think from that is where Kate, who was our graphic designer, reached out to us and was like, I'm a graphic designer. I'm super interested in doing a cookbook project. It's always been like a dream of mine to kind of work on something like that. And I've never done it before. And she had been like an avid follower and part of like our community, I guess. And
in a godsend.
Yeah, because I think the original plan was that I was gonna do all the graphic design and layouts and stuff. But
which you totally have the skills to do that too. But man, that probably would have taken another year on top of it. Yeah. Kate's work was magnificent. She
like took it to the next level.
She did. She breathed new life into the project. It was amazing. If anyone's ever considering it, highly suggest. Working with somebody that specializes in that, because she really helped a lot.
Yeah, because we were already, I think, spread quite thin, working on all the different things that went into making the actual cookbook, like the actual content of the cookbook.
Yeah, and you did all the photography as well.
Yeah, so I went to art school. I didn't study anything really relevant, but within my degree, I studied things like Photoshop and Premiere and photography and things like that. And so it all kind of came natural to me, and I've always had a hobby and passion for photography. I'd never really done food photography before, but I had always like, I don't know, looked at blogs and Instagram and things like that where people take food pictures, so you can kind of draw inspiration from that, and like Pinterest and stuff for all dishes. So yeah, we kind of used that as like a base outline and idea for how we were going to format the pictures and lay everything out and in the food and stuff. Yeah, what else did we do? I don't know that there was
there was a lot more, but I think the key takeaway is we started with knowing nothing and we know a lot more now.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I was going to say it was actually really heartening to hear that, because when you started kind of talking, I was like, gosh, did they do this all themselves? And that would just be so, and not disheartening. I mean, obviously great, very inspiring for y'all, but to think that you're like, taking on this, maybe for you, Justin, a lifestyle change, but Juby, for you, just kind of really delving into the raw veganism or trying these recipes and, creating this lifestyle and trying to share that. And so to think of taking that on, obviously you guys have a kid as well. And so if you would have done all this yourselves, I don't know if that would be as inspiring to everybody on this to think, yeah, I can do that too. So I'm actually pretty relieved that you did have someone come in and help with the design. Because as I mentioned, I mean, it looks fantastic. Oh, and they dropped out. That's okay. So I will say to anyone who is joining us, or hey guys, welcome back.
Hey.
So we'll drop in Justin and Juby their information so that you can follow along. But I did want to ask, so y'all mentioned sharing the process along the way. Was that helpful for you? I mean, I know obviously linking up with Kate, which was fantastic, but did you kind of do that to crowdsource or to get information about, do you want to hear about these recipes, or what are you interested in? Or was it just more of a, here's what we're working on and what do you think kind of posts?
Yeah, I would say the latter. I think we were just trying to share more of like behind the scenes and what it was looking like for us. It was also unintentionally a really great way to have like a buildup of excitement or whatever you want to call it for the actual final release of the book. So it was just this, like, people had known we were working on it for like 6 months. So when it finally came, they were like, yay, celebrating as much as we were. So that was nice.
Yeah, they were so kind too, being patient. It's like, oh, it's going to be another month, but I swear it's coming.
Yeah.
But it was also another really good way to, like you said, give people's feedback too. So that we could also kind of better understand like things that our audience are interested in hearing more about, or maybe particular types of food or particular types of recipes. So yeah, it was fun building up excitement and getting feedback.
Yeah, I feel like when you have a community that y'all have built, I always think, and we tell our authors this all the time, that whenever you're working on a book, I mean, I think that's so important, is letting people know what you're working on. And like you said, Juby, getting that buy-in so that when it happens, they're excited. And, I mean, 6 months is a pretty good turnaround time for when you start telling people about it and delivering it. So I think that's really amazing. But I want to ask, I think, your book is really unique. And so, but from your perspective, what do you think makes your book stand out and is different than other cookbooks that may even be sort of delving into the same dishes that you might be talking about?
Man, that's a good question.
Well, I think there's a lot of different things, I guess, that come into play for that. I'll touch on, I guess, the topics, and you can dive a little into what. So I think, so obviously, like, mentality and feeling good after what you eat. Like realizing there's a really good connection from good food and feeling good. So that's a big aspect of it. Music and just having the right mentality to come and cook and enjoying the process and not just being like stressed out and bogged down by having to like cook a meal or whatever at the house. And the fact that the dishes are like a variety of difficulties. So no matter what kind of skill set you have in the kitchen, you can like make a really easy dish or you can make a really complicated one. And then for most of them, there'll be leftovers. So for that day that you're feeling lazy and don't want to have to cook anything, it's a really quick way to have a meal. There was another one that I was going to say.
Well, I think another aspect of it too is, like you mentioned, we live in a bus, and the title is Tiny Home, Big Flavor.
Yeah.
And so obviously, like, you could probably imagine our kitchen's pretty small. So like all of these recipes like are pretty applicable to other people who are also nomadic, or maybe they RV for the summer or what have you. These recipes are approachable for people with tiny homes, tiny kitchens, love the outdoors, and know about that lifestyle too.
Like packing and taking on the go. Like if you're going out for a hike, there's some good ones that are easy to grab and go kind of thing. The other thing I think is a lot of people who follow us aren't necessarily vegan or plant-based, which is totally fine. And I think that's a big thing that we like to put out there into the world, that whatever your diet is that suits your body is what's important. And so we have a lot of good meat alternatives for people who are trying to experiment with like non-meat dishes, but then also give you the option to kind of put in your meat if that's what you would prefer. So like, it's just versatile.
Yeah, that was huge for us, especially like when we talked about that process where we were transitioning our diets and figuring out what worked for us. We recognized that not the same thing works for her diet as it does for my diet, and we wanted to respect that for the people who are consuming the cookbook. So letting people take the cookbook, and even if they switch up the recipes if they have to fit what their diet is, and not be so strict and like, this is all you can eat, this is when you can eat. It's just like, eat what works for you, but make sure it's delicious.
Right. Enjoy it. Right. I think that's, one of the important parts. And if you can enjoy eating it and then feel good afterwards, that's like the optimal, right? That's what everybody hopes for. So I saw, going through this, I've never seen this in a cookbook before, but so many people listen to music while they're cooking. So I thought it was such a great idea. And I can't wait to tune in to some of the music that y'all listed. But how did that come to be? What made you want to include songs that go with the recipes?
Actually, my sister had just bought a cookbook in the UK, and she was like, you should do this and put music in there. So we kind of stole that idea, I guess, from my sister's.
I won't tell anybody.
Yeah, but obviously not the same music, I don't imagine, and like wanted to definitely put that in there because a lot of people love the music that we listen to, especially what we put out on the YouTube videos. And it was just a way for you to get to know us a little better, and like also listen to what we listen to in the kitchen and in life in general, and just like have a little taste of, I don't know, good vibe.
Yeah, we talked a lot when we were marketing the cookbook too. We talked a lot about mentality, and for us as a family, like getting into the right mentality before a meal when you're getting ready to cook. One of those things is having a dance party before we even start cooking. So cranking up that music is something we're all about. So it was fun going through the recipes, getting a feel of the recipes, and then looking through our playlist.
Trying to find the right song.
Yeah, figure out like which had the right attitude for that recipe.
Yeah.
That was interesting to see like what we came up with for each recipe. So that was a cool addition.
Yeah. So would you recommend someone who's cooking their way through your cookbook? Do you start the song and then you start reading the recipe? Do you get prepped and then start the song? Is there like do you do the dance party and then the recipe? Is there a good go time to start the music?
I don't know.
Dance party first. Always dance party first before you do anything. And then dance while you're cooking too.
That might be an expert skill level. I haven't, baby steps, right? I already said I'm not great in the kitchen, so I don't know if I'm dancing and it can split my attention that many ways. But so Justin, you mentioned the marketing and how you approach that. So talk to me a little bit about how did you consider marketing? I mean, and when did that come along in the process? I know that you were sharing this with your audience, but talk to me a little bit about how you decided to market the book and how you wanted to share it.
Yeah, well, we knew that in terms of the marketing, we were going to be focusing this on our audience. That was what it was all about from the beginning. So we put a lot of touches that we knew that our audience would love. But like on the bigger scale, we actually worked with somebody on the marketing side of things too that really helped us coach how to develop a story and be able to share with people why it was important to us and how to share that with our audience and when and in what formats, So that was another thing that like the marketing, we were doing that for probably like 6 months to prep people. And because of that direction, I think we were able to craft a message that connected with our audience much better. Like I said, for the reasons why eating healthy is important to us, why positive mindset is important to us, which also ties into our channel and the YouTube videos we make and the Instagram posts that we post. It was really, I give a lot of credit to the folks that we worked with as we built up and finally released this last spring.
Yeah, I love that point of going with or having your why, because, a lot of books are out there. A lot of cookbooks are out there. We've all seen cookbooks. They're available all the time everywhere. But creating that why and being able to connect with that, I think, is what, stands out in your reader's mind. Or, obviously you guys have that community built. So honing in on what they're looking for and why they're attracted to you in the first place, and being able to amplify that and really share a bit of yourself. And like you're saying, the mindset and the foods that you're eating and that lifestyle, I think, is really important. And so for anyone who's listening and considering going on this journey, I would definitely recommend starting with your why and how you can share that with your audience. And also just, starting early with how you're sharing it. And so the marketing piece of it, I think, is so important. And so many people, will make the book and then at the end of it are like, okay, great, I have this book. Who wants to buy it? And it's like, well, you maybe should have thought about that in the beginning. So I'm happy to hear that that's what y'all did. And so another piece on the marketing side was that y'all are selling this directly through your own website. So what made you decide to go that route?
Yeah, I think it was primarily because we were focusing this product as an offering for our audience. And so it made sense for us to put it through our website. We actually timed the release of our new website with, we were going to release our new website shortly after we released the cookbook. And so it all kind of tied together and made a lot of sense. Not to mention that, like, the amount that you as an author get to keep when you sell it through your website and it's integrated in your website was much larger than if you were to sell it through a third party like Amazon too. So it didn't really make much sense if it was focused on our audience and we were able to keep a larger portion of the money that we sold per book. It made a lot of sense. So that was why we went that direction. I think that, from what I've read, making those decisions, it just depends on what your book is, who your audience is going to be, and how you're going to end up marketing it depends on what platform you're going to use or how you're going to get the book out there.
I also think that probably if it was just for sale on Amazon, unless you know who we are, it's probably what is this? I don't really know. But if you know who we are and know our lives a bit from YouTube, that you're more inclined to want to buy the cookbook and have interest in what it is that we're sharing.
Yeah, I've always felt that self-publishing and then, selling direct is so advantageous for people who know who their audience are and have built their platform, because you don't really need the middleman to navigate that for you. You don't need someone to distribute it for you because you know who you're selling to and they know how to find you. So I feel like that's such a good solution. But actually, it occurred to me, I didn't even ask y'all, what made you decide to self-publish? This book could be, when we saw it in our office, again, we make great books at Lulu, so not surprised at the quality, but it looks fantastic. So, I can imagine it would be pretty easy for you guys to navigate this and talk to a traditional publisher about picking it up. So what made you decide to start with self-publishing or go that route?
I think that when we were doing the initial research on what the options were, it just seemed like it was extremely approachable. Self-publishing seemed like something that we could wrap our heads around, and also we could control every aspect of the process. And this, to be honest, we poured our hearts into this and put a lot of time into it. So we wanted to make sure that this was done and it was done right. And so I think that just for us, it made a lot of sense to be able to understand that process, not to mention that putting ourselves through that process, we learn so much. So now we understand the process. So if there's future projects, like Juby has mentioned, talking about maybe doing a coloring book in the future. If we ever want to do that in the future, we know the process. Boom, there we go.
Yeah. Well, so talking about that and the going through the process of learning this new, skill set, really, what was the biggest learning curve for you in approaching this? You can share it to an audience of strangers.
Oh my God, so many.
I think for me, probably the biggest learning curve was setting everything up on all the platforms. So we use Squarespace as our website, and Lulu doesn't integrate with Squarespace. So we really struggled to figure out how we were going to do that. And initially we were going to get an API and had to work with a programmer or whoever.
Yeah, they do integrate with Squarespace, I think, but it's through the API.
Yeah, right? But everything got complicated because someone was going to have to code.
Oh, yeah.
And we didn't. It was going to cost $3,000, and we didn't want to deal with that. So we were just okay, how can we work around this? And a friend of ours was you need to look at Shopify. And I used to run a shop with Shopify. So I was well, we don't want a whole website. We just need to integrate it. And having Shopify and Squarespace, it's just going to get confusing having all these different websites. So I guess we found out that Shopify has like the lowest tier where you can have a button integrated into a website, doesn't matter where. So we integrated Shopify and Lulu with the button to the Squarespace, and it just became this huge animal of like a, stepping stone, trying to figure out like how everything was going to work. And then the initial opening day was definitely a challenge, trying to like track down where there was issues with like shipping costs and stuff, and it was all how everything was integrated and making sure that everything was like on with the right settings or whatever, so that it would all work the way it should, and we wouldn't have to eat costs for shipping, or I don't know, it just
the technology
that was an animal,
things.
yeah,
and making sure
we're not like computer nerds, so it was definitely a challenge to figure it out. But everything is running super smooth now, and like now that it's set up, it's easy. Like it's a button on our website, on the Squarespace site, on our actual website, and like it's super easy to buy the cookbook, and it prints and ships, and we don't have to do anything. So,
and I have to mention too, like we use Lulu Express, which integrated into Shopify.
Yeah.
And to be honest, using that integration, I mean, it was
way
ridiculously smooth, way easier. And so that connection made the speaking between Shopify and Lulu super smooth. And like you said, today we've got it to the point where it is now, and it's super easy. And then I think like another learning curve from my side was the marketing side. The marketing side of everything was such a bear. It was such an animal. The folks that we work with, they gave us a lot of homework and a lot of stuff to do, which we were happy to do because we wanted to learn a lot. But, at the same time, we're trying to perfect these final recipes, get everything uploaded in the right way.
Everything was happening at once.
Oh my gosh, the end was just an animal. And we had no idea how much you had to think about in terms of marketing and sales funnels and what else do questionnaires and bonus materials. There was so much, a lot more than we had ever imagined, but it was a huge learning curve, but worth it.
Yeah, actually, that was something that I saw on your website. So for the bonus materials, what made you? Was it kind of the marketing advice? Was add some stuff to it, or what made you want to kind of sweeten the deal a little bit?
Probably I guess marketing. We had also been working on putting together a playlist, anyways, for the like songs that we were going to pull for the cookbook. So we were like, why don't we share the entire playlist, and what can we do to make things easier for people who are also still overwhelmed by like, okay, I bought this cookbook, but now I just don't really know where to store it. So having a meal planner is sort of like an easy way for you to figure out. What were the other ones? 2 live cooking sessions on our Facebook page, and then also like being a part of a community on the Facebook page, and like sharing the recipes, sharing your own recipes, and just getting more than just what we can offer, but like having a community of foodie people is also a plus, I guess.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. I mean, there's something that like really hit our heart pretty deep whenever we would see people join the community on Facebook and then post pictures of the recipes that they made and introduce themselves. That was something that was really special to us, to see all of this time and energy turn around and like be actually making a positive impact on other people directly. That was huge for us.
Well, it's also cool, I think, on our end, because like everybody knows who we are because we have everyone seeing us on YouTube and Instagram and stuff, but we don't know what anybody looks like unless they're kind enough to like send us a DM and like share a family photo or whatever. And so it was just really cool to get to know some of our like hardcore like food community within our big following of people, and like being able to connect with them and put a face to the name, and just like it just is more intimate that way. So yeah,
I love that, making it an experience and not just a transaction. I think it's such a cool idea with doing that, and hopefully when you see the pictures of the recipes when they're created, it's not like Pinterest fails and you're like, that's not at all how did you end up that that way? Or maybe people can send pictures and think, tell me where I went wrong, because this is not at all what your book looks like. So we've got a little bit of time left. I have a couple more questions for you. And then if anyone who is listening would like to submit some questions, I've seen a couple come through. But I wanted to talk about your One Tree Planted initiative that I've seen on your website and on your Instagram as well. So talk to me about sort of kind of aligning a mission-based perspective with the book and what that was like.
Yeah. Well, I think for both of us, it's super important to have more of like a sustainable and eco-friendly lifestyle. And we do our best like at home to reduce waste and plastic and use recycled things and buy thrifted products and stuff like that. And just being able to not only create this product and change people's lives, hopefully, is one, piece of it, but being able to contribute to the world that we live in. So even if people who aren't buying our cookbook, but at least we can give back to the world to help them anyways, so that we can all live a more sustainable, eco-friendly life. We're both big into like the earth, I guess. He studied horticulture, so that's definitely something he vibes with. And I don't know, we just are rooted in wanting.
I think it ties into just like the whole Justin and Juby brand itself. Environmentalism to us is something that's really important, and we're continually looking for different ways that we can volunteer or contribute financially to support causes that we believe in. One Tree Planted was one of those, and I hope that the folks who support and purchase the cookbook can have the same feeling we do when we contribute to that organization, and that they're contributing, like you said, to a more sustainable environment, which is huge.
And even if it's an ebook, obviously it's not made out of paper, but regardless of the product type that we sell, we still pull $1 from each sale and donate at the beginning of each month. So that's pretty exciting to like get a certificate with how many trees we planted. And yeah, it's like the beginning of, I feel like, the next chapter of us also wanting to like educate Azalea and take her out on like tree planting expeditions and just like teach her more about, taking care of our environment and giving back and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, as an inhabitant of Earth, I thank you. I appreciate that. It's always good to know that people are looking out. So I feel like that's a great message. And, at Lulu, we're a B Corp. And so I'm always interested. It's, it's something that we try to do on our side, but it's always exciting when you see people take it a step further and look out for the world. And so I think that's tremendous. So for anyone out there, this is, I think, my last question, then we'll open it up. But for anybody out there who may be thinking, oh, I'd love to create a book, or maybe I'd like to make a cookbook, do you have any pearls of wisdom or anything that you would share that you found really helpful, or maybe anything that you thought, I would never do that, this is not the right move to make? Any tips you could provide?
I just have to remember what I made a note of. Okay, I remembered. It was just to collaborate with other people. I think having Kate was just like a lifesaver. She just made it that much better and did things that I probably wouldn't have known about, like resources, using free like non-copyright images, and just having good connections to more of what she's aware of, like in her graphic designer world, which I don't know anything about. So that was super helpful. And just having also another set of eyes on the project, obviously, like she caught, certain things and just had nice touches that we wouldn't have probably used.
Yeah, I would echo that too. I mean, the folks that we worked with for the marketing piece and then the design piece were instrumental for this book to become what it did. And so if other people are starting to work on a project, whether it's a cookbook or a cookbook in general, reaching out, even if you're not like paying for help, talking to other resources or some of your friends or family members, whoever, just have a conversation with them and ask their opinion. I think that can bring a ridiculous amount of value. And then the other side of it would be like, if you've been pondering it for a while, you just literally need to get started. Like it's like we said when we got started, we just started doing stuff on Google Drive and piddling around, and then we had no idea how big of a project it was going to become or how long it was going to take. But we started on day one, and then it just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and we just started biting off bigger chews each time until we finally got to the end and launched it. And, if we hadn't started day one, we'd probably still be talking about it, so just do it,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so true. When you think about writing a book, you get so caught up on, not being able to see the forest for the trees, or just seeing the forest and not really understanding how do you even get started with this. The end result is like, this physical thing you can hold in your hands, but the thought of, how you get started on it can be so overwhelming and make people not do it at all. And so I think that that's so important is, it all starts with the first step, and, the saying, how do you eat an elephant? Just one bite at a time. So you got to start somewhere. So I have one more question based on that though. But when you were going through the process, is there anything that you would do differently looking back on it?
I think I would have on my end, a lot of the recipes that we did were like recipes that were made in-house, and then like towards the end of the whole time that we were making the cookbook, we were just kind of crunched for time, and there wasn't enough time to make revisions, and we were just sort of like making. So there was a lot that weren't tried, but they weren't tried and tested in many ways to like make it the most perfect as I would have liked, but they were like tried in, you know, in our time. They weren't like super new recipes, but I just would have liked to have had time to like tweak a couple recipes and kind of mess around with them a little bit. And then also have an oven because we didn't have an oven. So we were working with limited like kitchen, you know, utensils and supplies and stuff. So I think there is a couple recipes that I would have loved to have put in there that didn't get to go in because of certain things like the oven. But yeah, for me, that's probably.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I don't think I would go back and change anything. I think it was all great. But yeah, you're right. I mean, like, if you're making a cookbook, maybe, I don't know, like, finish all your recipe iterations before you start the marketing and launch day.
Yeah.
Maybe that one would be a good
finish
one.
the book and then launch.
Yeah. Then figure out when you're going to launch.
Working on,
Because the recipe iterations, that was probably one of the most fun parts.
Yeah.
And man,
and editing was a really big monster to tackle, and we were like editing at the same time as dealing with creating marketing content and videos and emails and stuff. So that was a lot in one go.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's something we talk to our authors about a lot, is having a team with you to help create your book. And I always think about that for, you know, nonfiction books or novels, because you obviously want to have someone to edit and cover design and things like that. But I'm realizing through talking to y'all that it's actually equally important to do that with a cookbook, because it's something I didn't really think about. But yeah, I guess there's plenty of opportunities to misspell things or put the wrong measurements or, you know, need that extra help with that. So I think, I mean, it's good to hear that you guys are working with a team as well, because I think that's so important to do. So I was looking in the chat and I saw some people asking about how many recipes you had in the book, and then someone stanned you and said 50 recipes. So I'm wondering, how did you hit that number, and how did you know, like, we have enough now, we should stop, or were you just running out of time? How did that work out?
It was more like, that feels good.
Yeah, honestly, there wasn't a number we were trying to hit. We have a cookbook at the house that we love, and it's like the fatness of the cookbook. I don't think we even counted the number of recipes that were in there, but we went off of like how many pages maybe that we would want to have in the cookbook, and that meant that we needed to have like around about this many recipes. But to be honest, we weren't like, okay, this is recipe number 7, this is recipe number 27.
Yeah,
like,
there was probably a lot less. We concentrated on a lot of other aspects of the cookbook, way more than that.
We just kind of winged that part.
Yeah.
Well, like 50 is a really nice number to end up on. So for winging it, that's pretty sweet. That's good. Well, so I have one of the questions I saw come through. I'm not sure if you guys will know the answer to this, but maybe you came across this. So you mentioned, Kate, using non-copyright images, which, you know, is the way to go. But what about recipes? Do you know, is there like a copyright, anything that you need to be considerate of when you're creating a cookbook? Or did y'all run into that at all in your process?
Like for writing the recipes? Or, I mean, obviously there's copyrights on any other cookbook that's out there. But I have also read that, like, I mean, a recipe is a recipe that anybody can have, and like you can make alterations to it and it's no longer the same recipe.
I think that, like, from what I read too, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's really, really tough to copyright a recipe, but I think really what a bigger thing to keep in mind is like, just don't copy other people's recipes. You know, like if you want to make an iteration, take the recipe and make it yours. Don't copy somebody. I think that's like the best thing. It's just like, go with your gut, you know, on that one, and just make sure that, you know, if you're putting something in the book, you know, it came from your heart and it's your version of it.
Yeah, and it's got to be such a better feeling, or so much more rewarding when you're getting the feedback that's positive about, you know, recipes that are yours and that have a connection to you, you know, rather than going, you know, on Google and then finding whatever, you know, the top result for raw vegan tasty recipes. So I imagine the payoff is a lot better. And obviously you guys put a lot of work into it. So I've seen a couple questions about Kate. So does Kate have, does she have a professional website? I'm seeing a couple of people ask about how to get in touch with her. So I don't know if she has a website or if you want to share that. But if so, I will let you. But I will also remind everybody that's listening, they found Kate through sharing their book. So that's all, the communities that you're connected with and the different organizations, you may find your own Kate.
Yeah, so we're going to put her website in the chat. And website is, if anyone else is looking for a graphic designer, we cannot speak highly enough. Like, working with her was a dream, as we mentioned before. She was super fast and speedy, and especially, I got to give her props when we were about a week out or two. Yeah, when we were about 2 weeks out from launch date, and we had something that needed to be changed, and we sent it over to her. I mean, it was like that. So highly suggest it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right. We are winding down, coming to the end of the hour here. So is there anything else that you guys want to share, or any other anecdotes or information you can bless us with while we have you here before you whisk off to Iceland tomorrow?
I know that I'll say, and it's not just because Lulu is hosting the webinar, but I will say also thumbs up to you guys, man, because using the platform was easy. And we talked about those 3 integrations. Of all 3 of the integrations we used to sell, like Lulu was the most straightforward and the one that we didn't have any issues with. So
with also, I think, like, probably the best rate for the type of book that we were trying to make, like a lot of images and not just text.
Not to mention, like, also consistent quality. Like, we ordered a number of books to give to friends and family, and the quality was stellar. So, dude, nice job, guys.
Thank you. I wish I could take credit for all that. We should probably end on that note. So it's like, cut out. Well, I thank you guys so much for joining us. It was amazing. I am so excited to buy your book. I can't wait. I hope that I will be, if I join your Facebook group, a star student with showing you what I've made, and not the one that's like, why is it not a solid when I was trying to make this pie or whatever? I'll incorporate the dance party and then the recipes and see where that takes me. But thank you guys again so much for joining us. Thank you for everybody who tuned in. And I hope that everyone has a wonderful Wednesday. Justin and Juby, good luck on your travels. And I hope that I'll see you again soon.
Sounds good.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Take care, guys.